Hello, today we're going to talk to you about the MTSS process for behavior, which is Mtss B. Why Mtss B? Mtss B stands for Multi-Tiered Systems of Support for Behavior. It is a research-based framework for teaching and supporting positive behaviors for all students. The benefits of Mtss B: there are fewer behavior issues, more instruction time in the classroom, and increased attendance for student success. Mtss B is not a curriculum or prepackaged program. It is a framework that guides our district through a process of addressing unique cultural, climate, and behavioral issues. The following slide has the Mtss B flowchart on it.
How do you use the flowchart? Tier 1, you would provide classroom-based lessons. You would set school-wide expectations and then track and analyze discipline data on a regular basis. Consistency is key. Tier 2, you would have small group targeted lessons that you would do inside or outside the classroom. You would provide mentoring or connecting with students to target specific behavioral needs for specific students. Tier 3 becomes more individualized. Individualized student supports. You may have something like a check-in, check-out sheet with specific behavioral goals that student is working towards. You also may use wraparound support through school, home, and community. Utilizing things in the community supports with people outside of the school is very helpful, along with getting parents or guardians involved with the students and their behavior at school. A reminder is that a similar process should be used for Mtss B as it was for Mtss A, which you saw in an earlier video. Also, a student can exhibit both academic struggles and behavioral concerns. Let's look at the following examples of students. This is student A. This is a student we see commonly, a classroom disruption. We may not always know why the student is disrupting the classroom, but the student participates in class-wide behavior instruction in Tier 1. If the student continues to exhibit disruptive behaviors, the team reviews behavioral data and student meets the recommendation for Tier 2. So then we add on that next layer. We do not forget about Tier 1. The student will meet in a small group for 20 minutes 2 times a week with a targeted behavior to instruct Tier 2. After Tier 2 has been used for 6 weeks of an intervention, then we analyze the next step. We look at the behavioral data consistently over time with Tier 1 and Tier 2. Let's look at student B. Maybe we have an introvert with anxiety. In Tier 1, the student receives this class-wide lessons. The teacher targets the lessons to incorporate some shutdown behavioral type lessons. So we know that student is in our classroom. We know what the student needs. And so we target that Tier 1 to help that student and also any other student that may have the same behavioral concerns. After Tier 1 and we still have concerns, we move into Tier 2. The student would then attend a 20-minute session with 2 or 3 other students who exhibit the same behaviors with the school social worker. Now remember, these are just examples. And so these are suggestions for the student, but your school or your team may choose to handle it differently. Tier 3 then becomes more intensive. That student continues to struggle in class, even with the Tier 2 intervention. And so the teacher meets with the family and outside counseling to put together a plan for counseling sessions 3 times a week for 6 weeks. And the parent consent will definitely be necessary for this. Remember, Tier 1 is the start. It does not stop, and we layer with Tier 2, and then Tier 3 is even layered. So that student is still getting those 20-minute sessions 2 or 3 times a week with other students in school, along with the counseling outside of school. Let's look at Student C. Student C is a student with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and possible ODD, which is oppositional defiant disorder. At Tier 1, this student participates in the classroom-wide lessons. The student is also screened for behaviors that impact his or her behavior in school. This may be a universal screener that the school has used that we could get some more information, especially to hone in on that ODD. The Tier 2 part for this student would be that the student uses a check-in, check-out sheet daily to track behaviors, and then it is in a small group for targeted lessons, 30 minutes twice a week. So the student is carrying the check-in, check-out sheet to and from each class period or throughout the day, and also is getting targeted lessons for 30 minutes to work on that focus and attention or following directions in the classroom. That focuses on the ADHD and the ODD. If Tier 2 is not successful or we don't see an upward trend of success, then we move into Tier 3. Tier 3 is a student has a functional behavior assessment completed during a team meeting. These forms can be found on the ISBE website, and a behavior plan is written for that student. The student also has a mentor from the community who can assist the student 3 times a week with targeted behavior goals. So you're going to do the functional behavior assessment to see which behavior is the most concern or what is seen the most across all areas of his or her school day. Then the team is going to write the behavior plan that focuses on that top behavior. Yes, there may be other concerns, but we are just focusing on one step at a time. And that's what's hard with behavior. It really can be challenging. Then that mentor is going to be targeting those behavior goals. This mentor can be inside the school, yes, but having a person from the community can also be helpful. Maybe that student attends a specific activity outside of school and you use a mentor from there. Maybe the student is active in their church, and so you use a mentor from there. Let's move on to Student D. This student has experienced trauma as a small child and does not trust adults. This can be a challenging situation because we don't always know the background of that student. The student will, in Tier 1, just like every other student, receive the class-wide lessons with peers. The teacher is aware about the background or some of the background of that student and supports the student using peer buddies. Giving that student the trust with other children in the classroom then takes out that adult role, and you want that student to be more successful. If we still see concerns, we move into tier 2, and the student meets in a small group with 3 or more students, with a staff member from the school reviewing lessons about creating relationships. You have to build that trust. That trust is not just there automatically. Tier 3, layered on top of tier 2 after 6 weeks, if we don't see the upward positive trend, is the student would meet with the school social worker for 20 minutes 4 times a week to talk about trauma, past experiences, and how to activate coping skills. This would also need parental consent. Tier 3 usually involves the parents, the staff of the school, and sometimes community members. Let's move on to the next student. Student E. Student E struggles with attendance to school. Tier 1. We have our school-wide student attendance policy. We have small lessons or incentives to get students to school and to be present. We know that the best thing for a student is for them to be at school. Staff support the student when he or she is there, giving them the positive encouragement that they are there. If the student still is struggling to get to school, we move on to tier 2. The outreach worker or dean works with the family to put a plan in place to support multiple students who have missed the same number of days. How do we find that information? By the data that is collected through attendance. And also, don't forget to celebrate those successes of the student. If the student consistently comes to school even 2 days in a row, celebrate that. Tier 3, along with tier 2 and tier 1, the school staff works with truancy and the Regional Office of Education and creates an individualized plan to support the student to get to and from school. Don't forget, even though you are working day in and day out to get this student to school, you have to celebrate the successes. If they make it for half a day, if they make it an hour late, if they make it to school 2 days in a row, celebrate those things.
Now we will look at some forms for Mtss B after listening to those examples of students that we were talking about. We have universal screeners, and so at tier 1, those behavior documentations by teachers, specific things that you're seeing, specific things that you're tracking. The best screener, and then MTSS team decision or community recommendation. So if a student maybe has had something traumatic in their lives and we're seeing lots of behaviors at school, we need to follow up and look into that. Also, class or grade level based, if they're at 80% or not at 80%, the way in which you address those things, tier 2 and then tier 3. So it takes you through the steps. These are laid out just as MTSSA, but this is what you do prior to any movement into special education. I also have another form that you saw linked on the first page, and that is for your behavior intervention specialist. Behavior intervention referral process is consistently implementing tier 1 behavior interventions for a minimum of 3 to 6 weeks, and you're collecting data of antecedent behavior and consequence, and that kind of gives you a description of what those are. If you're not seeing any improvement in the behavior or need to move towards Tier 2 intervention, you can work with your school social worker in the building, and then with that assistance, just trying to find suggestions and things to do with the student. You're looking at another 3 to 6 weeks to collect data and put all of your information together. If no improvement is observed, the student would then be eligible for Tier 2 and Tier 3. So you're doing that intervention, you're collecting that information and moving through the tiers. Your building principal is also another great person to consult with in regards to a student. And after you've done some interventions, tried different strategies, then you can request that behavior interventionist, and that needs to go through the building principal. And then that's when you would fill out, if you were moving forward with that, fill out the behavior consultation form. So what this form looks like is it's kind of an information page. So here we have the student's name, their birthday, their school grade, teachers' names, and you can put a variety of people in there, especially if they're high school or junior high, and they have multiple teachers. Are they special ed, gen ed? What are your areas of concerns, their strengths? What strategies have you used prior to that you have not seen any improvement in their behavior? And then lastly, who have you, what is the personnel that you have become involved with? And then also attach any data that you have collected, anything like that. You're going to move into a meeting. Remember, once we get into that Tier 2, Tier 3, we're involving other people than just ourselves. And so that information, like, you're going to be talking to the parent about moving in and having somebody else come observe their student, referring the district person who's notifying the parent of the title. It could be the teacher, the social worker, whoever you choose to have that person doing that. And then the signature of the referring person, and then also your principal has to sign off of it. And then it comes over to the behavior interventionist to start working with you. So that kind of leads you through the forms. Mtss B follows the same guidance as Mtss A, so form-wise. And I appreciate you joining us for this overview. We hope that it helps and gives you a little more guidance in regards to what we are looking for, and then keeping everybody on the same page moving forward and providing interventions for our students.